Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel where we make law interesting for you. We'll talk about substantive law versus procedural law. Both of these are very important, so let's dive in. Substantive law. Substantive law defines what the law is. In other words, it defines the rights and duties of individuals. It tells us what is legal or illegal. It creates causes of action and defenses to a lawsuit. Substantive law focuses on the rights and obligations of individuals or entities. It is also sometimes called as the law of the substance. Examples of substantive law include the Indian Penal Code, which defines crimes and their punishments, such as theft, murder, and cheating. The Indian Contract Act, which defines what is a valid contract and what happens when a contract is breached. The Specific Relief Act, which lays down the circumstances in which a person can seek remedy from a court of law. Companies Act, which talks about the rules and regulations related to the formation and management of companies. Sale of Goods Act, which governs the transactions of sale and purchase of goods. These are just a few examples of substantive laws. Now let's understand procedural law. Procedural law, simply put, is a law which provides a procedure or a process to enforce a right or a remedy provided by the substantive law. It deals with how a case must be presented to a court of law. In other words, it tells us how the rules laid down in the substantive law are to be enforced. It is like a set of instructions on how to use the rights granted to you by the substantive law. For example, if you want to file a lawsuit for breach of contract, the substantive law will tell you that you have a right to sue for damages. But the procedural law will tell you the steps involved in filing a lawsuit, such as how to draft a plaint, how to file it, how to serve the defendant, what documents need to be attached, what is the time frame, etc. Examples of procedural laws include the Civil Procedure Code, which provides the rules for filing and trying of civil suits in a court of law. The Criminal Procedure Code, which provides the rules for investigation and prosecution of criminal cases. The Indian Evidence Act, which lays down the rules of evidence. The Limitation Act, which prescribes the time period for filing of lawsuits. These are some examples of procedural laws. Let us try to understand the difference between substantive law and procedural law with the help of a diagram. See this flowchart. Okay, let's take an example. A person commits theft, which is an offense under the Indian Penal Code. So here, substantive law comes into picture. The substantive law will define what exactly constitutes theft and what will be the punishment for the same. Now, if the aggrieved party wants to take legal action against the person who has committed theft, then the Criminal Procedure Code will come into play. The CrPC will lay down the procedure for filing the complaint, for the investigation, for filing the charge sheet, for the trial, etc. So this is how substantive law and procedural law are different from each other. It is important to note that both substantive and procedural law are essential for the proper administration of justice. Substantive law by itself cannot function without procedural law. Similarly, procedural law would be meaningless without substantive law. They complement each other and work together to ensure that the rights and obligations under the substantive law are enforced in a fair and orderly manner. I hope now it is clear to you what is the difference between substantive law and procedural law. Please let us know in the comments if you find this interesting, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do and like the video. See you next time.